The Half-Life modding scene has to be one of the biggest ones in gaming. Ever since the release of Half-Life 1 in 1998 and Half-Life 2 in 2004, there have been countless mods for both games, ranging from simple gameplay changes to entirely new custom campaigns and total conversions. And today we'll be looking at Entropy Zero, one of the mods for Half-Life 2. But what makes this specific mod so unique? Well, in Entropy Zero, you take the role of one of the Combine soldiers tasked with eliminating members of the Resistance. In the game's opening sequence, you actually raid one of the hideouts used by the Resistance in a really cool action set piece, which even opens in a camera playback style fashion from the soldier's mask. Very soon after the raid, you find yourself on board a Combine train before it inevitably crashes and you find yourself stranded in City 10, looking for a way out. The city is of course filled with zombies and headcrabs, as well as resistance soldiers, but amidst all the chaos looms another, more sinister foe, in the form of a mysterious virus which affects both humans and Combine alike. I will stop talking about the story here, as I don't want to spoil anything and you should really experience it for yourself. I will say, however, that Entropy Zero, in true Half-Life fashion, does a fucking amazing job at environmental storytelling. Instead of boring cutscenes or other forms of dialogue, the plot is delivered to you through the actual world itself. A lot of the maps and locations you visit actively speak to you through the way they are designed, so for example, you'll see resistance camps filled with beds, makeshift workshops, walls filled with poetic graffiti, and so on and so on. The entire city gives off the vibe of a really lived-in place, torn by the constant conflict between the humans and the Combine, a conflict now further flavored with a deadly disease. And even though these levels are linear, they're not just some long-ass corridors either. They do offer a certain level of exploration, as players can find secret areas containing supplies or various Easter eggs, and as for the overall presentation, the game looks and sounds exactly as you'd expect from a Source Engine game. It'll run like a charm and it looks good. There, I just summed up the entire thing. I would, however, like to mention the soundtrack, which is really good, does a fucking amazing job at replicating Kelly Bailey's iconic sound in his mod. So, the level design is great, the presentation is smooth, but how's the gameplay looking? Well, seeing as how Entropy Zero is the Half-Life 2 mod after all, it's not far-fetched to say that the gameplay look is similar to that of Half-Life 2. What this means is that you'll be going through linear levels, shooting zombies, headcrabs, barnacles, and the Resistance, while doing the odd puzzle here and there. These puzzles usually revolve around finding a certain item in the near vicinity, like a car battery for instance, then use said item in order to open up the path ahead. There are also some really great set pieces scattered throughout the campaign, for example like the one where you have to sneak through a resistance camp past a dozen or so turrets, but the reward for this short stealth section is that you get to turn the turrets onto the rebels. But the biggest change this mod does to the Half-Life formula is that the shooting mechanics have been drastically changed, and for the better. For starters, all weapons sound a lot more impactful, the shotgun for instance sounds like a goddamn howitzer, and all of the guns also do a lot more damage and have significantly more recoil, especially the SMG. I mean, just look and listen to the damn thing. Subsequently, you, the player, also take a lot more damage than before, and while these changes do take some time to get used to, especially if you're already very familiar with how the weapons work in vanilla Half-Life 2, they make the combat a lot more enjoyable than before. The overall shooting mechanics were never really all that great in Half-Life games. The combat in the original was carried by the great enemy AI, while Half-Life 2 had the almighty gravity gun, so seeing Entropy Zero try something different with its gunplay is truly a breath of fresh air. Just a heads up, the game by default is set to hard when you first start it, so feel free to change that if you find it too difficult. There are also a few new additions to the arsenal, as now you have access to a newer version of the Overwatch rifle with a bigger ammo capacity, plus you get to use the iconic combined manhacks and stun baton. The manhacks in particular can be very useful, as they can take a lot of damage and will aggro the enemy. Your character also spits these one-liners that comment on the situation in a witty way, and they're pretty good. The voice acting for the Combine is great. They really nailed that talking through the radio, semi-human, alien voice thing. Unfortunately, not everything is milk and honey, and this mod does have some issues with it. For starters, there are a couple of really annoying sections in the campaign that will kill you the first time you come across them, unless you know in advance what's going to happen. For instance, you enter a room, the door behind you closes, and someone drops a fucking grenade in, which insta-kills you, despite your health and armor points. These are basically trial and error sections, and I'm never fond of these, because they're just a cheap and lazy way to do a gotcha on the player. Of course, once you get through them once, you'll know exactly when they're coming, but still, in my honest opinion, they add nothing of value to the overall experience. Furthermore, at one point, you come across a real choke point of a hallway where, due to the high damage output, I'm sure you'll die a couple of times until you get through it. People who have played the mod know exactly which hallway I'm talking about. However, that's pretty much it when it comes to the negatives. You have to remember, this is a free mod after all, so it's really disingenuous to try and nitpick it. The overall experience is still pretty fucking great, and it will take you 2 to 3 hours on a first time playthrough to get through it. And let me just remind you that Blue Shift, which was an official fucking expansion, also has a similar playtime. And finally, it actually makes me so fucking angry to see projects like this go underappreciated by the mainstream crowd, while fucking dumpster fires like Hunt Down the Fucking Freeman lands you a fucking job at fucking Activision. What the fuck, industry? Still, I don't want to end this video on a downer, so yeah, Entropy Zero is a great Half-Life experience, which I wholeheartedly recommend to anyone who is a fan of the franchise. And that's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.